Sadah. She is an American convert to Islam, amazing lady with fabulous information to share with us today about her faith. Nora, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks very much, Siobhan. Appreciate it.
So excited about this. We're very interested in educating our audience, and I know there's a lot of misperceptions about Islam.
Too many.
But before we go directly into explaining the religion, just give us some highlights about your own personal story, how you came to the faith, and where you were born.
I was born in Appleton, Wisconsin, and started singing and performing professionally when I was a child. Just always was singing, and worked my way up to studying classical music in college, and found myself in New York City eventually, where everybody goes, and was singing with New York City Opera and in their education department, and made my debut at Carnegie Hall. Sang with New York City choral artists, New York Philharmonic, and some solo work, some non-solo work, but in the city that never sleeps. So that was a big accomplishment and something I loved very, very much. My life, even my religion at that time was my music. And always liked learning about different people, and was always a little bit connected to God, but in sort of in a vague way. You know, I worship God through my music and grew up as a Christian. And walked into a coffee shop run by, unbeknownst to me at the time, an Egyptian. Was always interested in getting to know other people, and started talking to him, and I thought, oh, cool, Pharaoh and pyramids, tell me. And we got talking, and he said he was a Muslim, and I was a little bit embarrassed to tell him I didn't know anything about Islam, and I had sung many times as a choral singer at churches, different kinds of sects of Christianity, Judaism, and my friends were kind of dabbling in other theologies and isms like Buddhism and so forth. So I was on the sidelines viewing all this.
Sure.
And not really grasping one or another, but, believing in God. And I was fascinated, but embarrassed to tell him I didn't know anything about Islam. So he started to tell me, and I was fascinated because it wasn't at all what I expected.
You had some preconceived notions.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Like most Americans, you think it's perhaps a pagan deity, Allah is a pagan deity, and an Eastern religion which conjures up many gods. And it's the antithesis of that. It's the most monotheistic religion, and it's part of the Abrahamic trilogy, if you will, of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, where we all, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, look at Abraham as sort of the grand patriarch of our religion.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. And I'm your layperson, non-Muslim layperson. So talk to me in ways we can grasp. But let's first start with the basic tenets of your religion, of Islam.
Well, it's very monotheistic, as I said, probably the most monotheistic of all faiths, in that the worship of one God. God is the creator and sustainer of the universe. And what drew me to Islam was the concept that it was one revelation from God, the same God. Everyone worships the same God. It was the same revelation passed down through pious men called prophets or messengers. And we have the same story of Adam and Eve, and Adam was close to God and knew everything about him, but subsequent generations fell away from God and from his original message. God would send a messenger to bring them back to the original revelation, to the original message of how to worship him. And this was passed along from Adam to Noah to Abraham, Moses, Jesus, and finally Muhammad. And this blows people away in America to hear this. Like, what? We have all this similarity. It seems so different. It seems
we
so
always
strange.
Focus on the differences, don't we?
Yeah. So,
well, let's talk about those differences, and maybe more importantly, the misperceptions that Westerners have about Islam.
Well, the big perception is that we're terrorists. And I see where that's coming from, because there's a lot of strife going on in the world and a lot of fighting. But if we look at actually the name Islam, and just a quick lesson in Arabic, Arabic words are made from a three-letter root verb. And you hear that sounds SLM if you listen to Islam, Salam, Muslim. You keep hearing this SLM combination. And it comes from the root word salama, which is peace or submission. As in submitting to God, you find peace. So the religion of Islam is submission to God and finding peace in that surrender. And then a Muslim, if you put mu in front of something, it becomes a person who does it or
who does the practice
part of that.
Of.
Yeah, so a Muslim, not a Muslim, or we have so many different pronunciations, but the most correct is Islam and Muslim.
Muslim,
yeah.
Okay. Now you've got a very unique story, being that you're born in this country, as you said. You grew up Christian. So when you converted to Islam, were you accepted just as much as if somebody who had been born into the faith?
Sometimes you're kind of a celebrity when an American embraces Islam. And I embraced it quite quickly and quite strongly. Once I read through the Quran, I was very convinced that I was onto something important and truthful. So I came in, and I was an older woman. I was about 36. I was not a child, and had already been very independent, living on my own and so forth, and traveling a lot, reading a lot. So I came in strongly, and initially the first community rather treated me like a celebrity. And I did a lot of talking about it also, and
Was that
trying
here
to
in
get
the
the community.
United States?
Yes, here in my community, back in Appleton, Wisconsin. I went back home to live with my mom and found a Muslim community in my backyard, practically.
In Wisconsin?
In Wisconsin, yeah.
Well, speaking of your mother, how did she react to the news that you had converted to Islam and you essentially had walked away from your singing career at that point?
Yeah, I did.
Wow.
That was probably harder than the whole conversion to Islam part. Most of us women that convert to Islam, our parents don't have so much a problem with the religion as they do with the dressing.
Yes.
It's like, okay, what you believe in your heart is fine, but we don't want to know about it on the surface. So that's where my mom and I kind of locked horns a little bit, which was sad because we were very close always.
Sure. Well, that's interesting. And again, in a next video, we're going to be talking about women and Islam, and we will address the hijab and the scarf there as well.
Again, a lot of misconceptions about that.
So, okay, you were accepted as a celebrity, being a convert, which again...
Well, it's a big deal. You know,
Yeah.
an American woman becomes a Muslim. You know, people were very happy about that. We hear other stories in other communities where people are sort of feted when they first become a Muslim, but then they're forgotten. Mm-hmm. And that's a big issue in our community, that we don't have the programs in place sometimes to take care of the converts, or reverts as we sometimes call ourselves.
To really help them
to help them stay in the community. And the loneliness will send people out and away again. Because you have a family that you're on the outs with a little bit,
right,
because they don't understand what you're doing. And again, with the social media is really hurting us a lot these days.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So,
well, let's talk about, before we get into that, because, you know, obviously that's a big issue. Yeah. What do Muslims believe about other religions in terms of tolerance or...
This is what's lovely about it. What people don't know is how tolerant we must be according to the Quran, which is our holy book, which we believe is a divine revelation from God given to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel. And we believe each and every word is from God himself. And then we use the Prophet Muhammad as an example of acting out what we're supposed to do. And tolerance and acceptance, and no man is greater than another man based on color or financial status. The one who is the best in the community is the one who has the most awareness of God in his daily life.
Right.
So it's not based on your finances, your wealth, your
the
accumulation,
earthly things that people...
who you are in your community, all those earthly things, yeah. And people are people. Are there Muslims that throw that out the window? Of course.
Sure.
But it always comes down to a humanity issue and a humankind issue more than a religious issue.
Absolutely.
You know, our faults are, we can go two different ways as human beings. We can choose the right or the wrong.
Okay, well then again, let me ask you this about Muslims' views toward Jews. You know, there's obviously a great deal of tension in the Middle East right now between Israel and a lot of Middle Eastern countries. So how would you address that?
Well, the Jews and Christians are called in the Quran the people of the book. In other words, you have shared divine revelations with us. We believe in the Torah of Moses. We believe in the gospel of Jesus. I have to say the original sources of those, we believe that a lot of it has been changed. So, but those are our partners in faith because we're all still on that same Abrahamic path.
Yes.
We revert back to Abraham as the father, great-grandfather of our religion. And we say that he was pure in faith and monotheistic.
You're amazing. I mean, you were very scholarly. You've apparently spent many, many years studying the Quran and the religion, and it's remarkable.
I've become much more of a scholar and a student of learning in being a Muslim. I can't seem to learn enough and study enough and travel enough, and that's something I really feel Islam has given me.
That's wonderful. Okay, let me talk about the recent events with the extremist groups, particularly the horrific acts of ISIS.
Yeah.
So as a Muslim and you're trying to practice your faith and be a good citizen, you see this going on in the Middle East. Everything is horrific. It's all over social media, all over mainstream media. So how, in your opinion, how are mainstream Muslims dealing with this that's going on right now that unfortunately ties back to your people?
Other than ducking our heads down, and refuting it all the time. From all our leaders everywhere, refuting that this has nothing to do with Islam. And again, a religion that purports to be a vessel of peace, it seems very incongruous that there's all this strife going on and horrible acts done in the name of Islam. These tend to be more political, and what we find in the people who commit these acts, when asked about their religion, they really don't know it very well. There's an excellent book on the market right now called Radical, about a young man who was of Pakistani origin who grew up in Britain, and he joined a radical element, but really didn't know much about his religion. He was fighting more for himself as a Pakistani and then as a Muslim, and he ended up, unfortunately, spending some years in an Egyptian prison for promoting this group that he was part of. And actually, he found his religion and came out of prison saying, I disown these people. They aren't following Islam at all. And you tend to find this, in the stories. We have